Sup, bro? Do
You
people
can't
still say that?
I do. You can't pull it off though, man.
No,
You know
I
what?
can't. I told you I'm not cool.
That's something
Sup, bro?
we have never talked about, but you're really
Summer
bad with slang. You got no good
I can do gay slang,
Yeah, that's a different thing.
but that's a different thing.
Yeah.
It's not the same as like
This comes back to your hipness.
I'm not hip. I
You
never want to
have
be hip.
a single catchphrase.
Although when I taught high school, everybody thought I was cool, but not because I was hip.
It's because you're a nerd?
It was more so because I was like
Turn it to me.
relaxed and chill. Like, I think part of it,
You do-
part of being cool is like being like confident in yourself and who you are. So it's like I wasn't trying to like pretend to be cool for the kids. So
You're
then they
well
liked me.
collected though. You don't get stressed out very easily.
Oh no, I don't get visibly stressed out very easily. I'm good at keeping it cool, which they like too.
I catastrophize sometimes, but other than that, I don't really get stressed out either.
I also students liked me because I love to make fun of students all the time. And like
if you're
that was
funny, that's the thing is you're funny. If you're funny, you can win. So many teachers aren't funny.
Oh yeah, and they would say stupid shit just to make me make fun of them because they knew I would.
It's you know what? A big part of teaching is performance.
Oh yeah,
it's,
totally.
It's a bit of a performance. I can say that because I'm technically a teacher. And
obviously, like teaching TEFL in Japan is a lot different, you know.
Nah, you say funny stuff. I bet it's exactly the same.
But you couldn't like make fun of them like the way I could make fun of my kids.
No, it wouldn't be the same thing. But you make silly noises or whatever. It's
just go.
I know how to entertain, David.
You're an entertainer at heart.
Exactly. You stopped me right before we started and you said, I really want to talk about AOC on this episode. Where is that going?
So I like her.
Yes, I honestly, and I gotta
want
flex
her to
on
be
you.
president.
I gotta flex on you again. I liked her before you did. I was on the bandwagon before you were, and I think
Travis.
that says something about how progressive I am.
Travis.
Yeah.
You were not on the bandwagon.
I was on the AOC
Travis.
bandwagon when she was still running. Okay.
Travis, I've been on the AOC bandwagon since she started running too.
I liked her when she was a bartender.
You didn't even know her.
I did. We knew each other. She added me on Kick. Not in like a weird way. I was just like, hey, give me some tips. So in a weird way, I'm kind of like a protege.
What was that app where people would go in? It'd be like you would
Yik Yak.
Yik Yak.
Yes.
Yep.
What the heck is this area? I've never been here.
Oh, this is the race. I think it's the race.
Oh, I'm
area.
not doing that.
But I'm not sure. There's other things in this area too.
I'm gonna look around. Actually, I want to finish the stuff at the castle first, or the mushroom.
Yeah. But no. So there was that congressman who like went up to her, and because she had said something about how like people who are homeless like need funding because of like economic stuff and poverty. Like people in poverty needed more benefits from the government because of coronavirus.
A controversial,
else.
a controversial opinion. Of course.
Yeah, of course. And this guy came up to her and he was like, "Why'd you say that?" And she's like, "I'm just like advocating for people." And he's like, "You're a fucking bitch." And blah, blah.
I don't think that's actually what. I don't think he swore.
I was reading and they said that other people corroborated that he did call her a fucking bitch.
Well, she tweeted today that the Washington Post story was falsified and that he never cursed. So I was taking that, but I guess you're a super fan, so you know better. You know better than her own tweets.
I would say, regardless of what happened, I think I think the way she deals with all of that crap from everybody else that she shouldn't have to deal with, and then she still like manages to be, I don't know, manages to still stick up for herself and other people.
She's
I just
very
really like
talented, very intelligent, very well spoken.
her. And she is my president. She's only 30, 31, and 4 years when Joe Biden dies, she better be my president.
I don't think he's got 4 years. I think they're gonna have to weekend and Bernie's him to the stage.
I thought they already weekend and Bernie's him.
Yeah, I really like her too. I think Congress needs more people that understand what. Because I feel like so many people in Congress have never worked conventional jobs, and I feel like
never.
having worked a conventional job fundamentally shapes your understanding of so many things. It is the majority of Americans work conventional jobs. That's a perspective that, and it's stupid because they'll say, oh, she should go back to bartending. She's a dumb chick bimbo. And then the next day they'll say, oh, she talks too much. Like, it's like make up her mind. Was she a dumb bartender? Or like it's
like they'll do whatever they can to, discredit her or make her look bad or whatever, which doesn't work because people like her.
Have you ever heard you ever listen to congressional meetings?
Oh yeah.
People sound so stupid. Some of them I'm not gonna. And this is not. No, this is prejudice. It's the old men. Honestly.
Oh yeah, totally.
I can't even say. You don't even need to say old white men because I think there's one black male congressman. I think
Senator. Yeah.
Republican. I think there's
Republican.
3 Democratic ones. It's not hyperbole to say that it's all old white men.
I see. I kind of want to be. That's why I kind of want to run for office too, because I want to.
You're gonna be an old white man in like the next 10 years. Your chance is gone.
Well, in 10 years, I'm eligible for vice. So AOC, call me up. I'll go over to her Animal Crossing island and be like, hey, can I be vice president? We need a vice president who understands what the people go through on a day-to-day basis.
I want to be optimistic, but I feel very pessimistic about the Democratic choice for vice president.
Last I heard, he said he's narrowed it down to 4 black women.
I know, but his whole... First of all, I don't think Joe Biden really knows or even cares who it is. I think he has very little input in it. I think it's mostly people running his campaign. Yeah, and I don't know. The way he did it during that the Sanders Biden debate made me feel like he had not at that point even really considered who he wanted to be his vice, and just was saying, because they had that whole moment where they're like, will either of you commit to having a black woman vice president? And Bernie was like, we're going to find the best person, but I'd love to do that. And then Biden's like, 100% will do it. I feel like that was the first time he had ever thought about it, when they asked him right there. And I doubt he's thought about it much since.
And the people pulled the Weekend at Bernie strings and made him say the words.
No.
I think more, it's good though. However it happens, I'm glad that it's happening because it needs to.
I don't understand their process though, because they were also vetting Amy Klobuchar, who did turn it down. But why were they even vetting her if it's guaranteed a black woman? Why are they picking an old white lady? That's because they don't care. They just say stuff, man. I don't.
That's what politicians do.
I know. I feel like a lot of people are like, he's gonna have to have a good VP choice, and I am very ready to be disappointed when it isn't.
Oh, I'm ready. See, I don't understand. I don't understand people who are like, I'm like optimistic in the sense that like I'm glad that it's not just old white people that will be here.
But it is.
But that's gonna be in like 50 years in the future.
I'll be dead.
Exactly.
50 years.
So like I think I'm like cautiously pessimistic, cautiously optimistic kind of person. I love it when people are like confused or like don't understand like that politicians that every single politician is that way. I don't care who it is. Every single politician
I think other politicians in history have been more... I don't think Joe Biden is very thoughtful.
No,
I really don't think he has a lot of passion. I think he's doing this for a lot... I don't think he's, like, selfish, per se. It just seems like...
He doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, and I mean, like... He seemed like he was a lot more alert and active during Obama-era politics, but maybe that's because he was kind of in the background. Like, he was... more of like a mascot.
Well, that's what the vice president is.
Oh, okay. I gotta be chunky up here. Okay.
The vice president is kind of a mascot because they don't really have that many constitutional authority.
If Biden gets elected, the vice president this time is not going to be a mascot. They're going to be doing a lot. That's the difference here, and that's why I feel like.
Well, that's why I feel like the process has taken longer than usual. Because
also COVID is a factor.
COVID, but I feel like the staff know that there's a good chance that he might get elected, and then the next day he's.
Biden said that he is. I don't think he's officially said that, but he said some things that made it seem like he has no intention of running for 2 terms. So either he like plans on dying, or is just trying to set up I don't really understand it. The main goal is to make sure Trump doesn't run. Or did not get a second term with Trump right now is what they're really trying to do.
Yeah.
But the problem is, I really don't think they're putting enough time and effort into, okay, well, what do we do if we win?
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say, I mean, a lot of campaigns are kind of like that, but I would say with this one, you're
this
kinda
is
right.
so different. At least when I think about campaigns, I'm not talking about the entire history. I'm talking about like Clinton, Bush, Obama, and Trump. Like the modern.
Well, I am not a Joe Biden apologizer or anything. He has released a couple of plans about, whoa, sorry. That's just.
Oh, I hacked it.
Oh.
I gotta get back in the mainframe.
I wonder what happened. He's released a plan that's about like extending $300 billion, extending childcare or whatever. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's good to see there's a plan at least. I doubt it's gonna happen like that, but at least it's something. So I don't know. Maybe I'm too. I'm like both pessimistic and optimistic.
But what are the hot topic issues of this election? It's not childcare.
Well, and clean energy. But
he is not committed to anything on that.
He released a plan.
He said
for
we're
it.
looking. Yeah, but he won't commit to the Green New Deal or anything like concrete.
Well, just because it's not the Green New Deal doesn't mean it's not a thing.
I know. I'm saying he's not committing to anything like substantial that has a lot of. He's saying, "Oh, we're looking at a lot of stuff, and I'm gonna do this," but he's not saying like I will support X or Y. He's not saying I will support Medicare.
I don't see
for
why
all.
it can't, because like the automotive and the train industries and everything were supported by government policy and government tax funds and all that stuff. So it's like, why can't we just like tax people and like fund green energy? I don't see why it's that big of a deal.
Because I think a lot of rich people
Because of rich people, yeah.
Rich people have a lot of investments in crude oil and coal, and keeping those as sort of big energy pieces keeps a lot of people rich.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same thing with healthcare. That's why we can't make price of healthcare, because the pharmaceutical industries have such a pocket.
And they just gave like $2 billion to Pfizer to make more of a vaccine. And I'm like, ugh.
See, and Biden won't commit anywhere on healthcare right now. And those are two of the biggest issues. I mean, I guess immigration reform would be another huge, or I guess just immigration in general would be another huge. Like, what if you had to say the top 5 like issues of this election?
Climate change,
which is
public
funny
health.
because you can count on 2 fingers maybe how many Democratic debates actually talked about climate change.
They talked about climate change like not every. That was
no,
healthcare.
it was less.
They talked
than
about
half.
it for like a couple of debates.
They
talked about
saw
healthcare
it.
for most of it, and I was bored.
They talked about healthcare for a lot of it.
Because it's like I already know what everybody's gonna say, so I'm out. I don't know. It's all a mess, which is what it is.
I would say
Climate change.
climate change.
I would say
immigration.
Public health.
Definitely add coronavirus now, even though
Yeah.
that wasn't one that was.
And I would say at this point, there's got to be some kind of reparations or some amendment or something towards racial equity, because that's.
I wonder. They count as technically two different things, but yeah, I would definitely say police reform and racial equity would be two of the big issues, which were things that were also not talked about a lot. They were talked very early when you still had like Castro and Booker and some of those other earlier guys, but they stopped. They wiped that out once it was just like down to 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're here. These guys seem like they're getting bigger.
I read this thing on Twitter, and I want to know your take on it.
Yeah, give me
and it
your
was
take.
like people were talking about like what went wrong with Bernie's campaign. And I think I read something on 538, which I think was actually pretty good, because there definitely is like the Democratic Party and all that stuff happened. I think that's part of it. I think people overestimate how much the party determines what happens, because it's like you wouldn't be able to get, like, for example, like you wouldn't be, even though Biden might have been like establishment, if he didn't have an overwhelming amount of black support, he wouldn't have won, because then the other candidates wouldn't have been as likely to back him before Super
I would
Tuesday.
say the DNC's establishment is the second biggest factor, but I know I feel like I know what you're going to say, is I think Bernie really, really did not talk about or have any... He did not talk about race almost at all.
Yeah.
He focused very much on class.
Which is important.
I think it was an important tactic, and I don't think it was by any means tone deaf, but I think if he had a better idea, or if we were having the debates now that we had 6 months ago, I think he would have talked about it a lot more.
Yeah.
I think race is such a big thing now. I do think Biden's established... I think Biden being a household name is really the big thing.
I think something I had read was about how, and I think this is something that white progressives need to figure out because it's a problem, is that like so many progressive movements have been about class, and then black people don't get any benefit from it. So like labor movements, for example, happened a while ago, or like women to vote. I mean, that's not progressive now, obviously, but it was like back in the 1900s.
I agree with
and
that as like a over-encompassing thing, but I don't know that that's as relevant to the Bernie campaign.
What I mean overall is just that black communities have not gained anything from progressive politics historically either. So it's like it's kind of incumbent upon progressives to also not, because people accuse Biden of resting on his laurels because he like was Obama's VP or whatever. But then it's the same thing where it's like, just because we're talking about economic equity doesn't mean we should also assume that then black people and other minorities will want to vote for us if we don't talk specifically about what we're going to do to benefit them either.
I think that it should have been something he talked about more, but I will almost say too, I think even if it had been a bigger talking point, I don't know if it would have changed things.
I don't know if it would have either, but I think that didn't help.
No, but I do think I think it's extremely unfortunate because I think you have a huge disparity if you just look at the voting records and the historical positions those two people have taken. You can go back 50 years and you can see Bernie doing civil disobedience and protests and like really being on the side of not just different races but kind of on every issue you can see. He was standing up for gays in the military when people like during the AIDS epidemic,
which is huge. Which is then crazy to me because it's like, then why did he not build, why was he not able to build that coalition in his campaigning then, if he was able to say, I've been doing this since I was 20 years old, I've been doing this since so to me it's like that makes it more like, to me that is stuff that I could use then as an asset to my campaign. So I'm not sure why that didn't feature prominently.
I don't know why there wasn't more negativity in that same sense against Joe Biden, who was against gay marriage until like 2006? Yeah, 2000. Like, he was against gay marriage for a very long time.
So it's like, I don't understand then, because I just don't know how the positioning will work. From what I've read about the campaign, is that they already came into the election. Oh, there was a blueprint, by the way.
Oh. Where was it?
It was like underneath the middle of the tree. I don't know why the campaign.
A blueprint?
Yeah, under the big tree.
Like from one of the.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought I saw one.
Those come in guys. They don't just exist. Oh, there's him. Okay.
Oh, the blue guy. What was I saying? I
think you can blame more on the DNC or the Democratic establishment, also because there were just too many people on that stage for way too long. We had for a long time for the primary, we had 8 candidates pulling people in different direction, and I think people got confused and frustrated. And I think a huge part of this also is the rhetoric. First of all, I think there was the huge negative rhetoric against Bernie going with socialism. I think that just got a really weird sort of taboo about it. And I think that, I'm not saying that this is started by the Democratic establishment, but I think they certainly pushed it, was the idea that Joe Biden is the moderate candidate and we have our best chance of winning if we pick the moderate. So I thought people felt if they picked any other candidate, they risked losing to Trump. And this is actually, I think I remember hearing on NPR that beating Trump for 41% of Democratic voters is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So I think people, you can see this with the way they had Biden rallies for a long time. People like Biden, but his rallies didn't have the same passion as Sanders or even Warren or even Buttigieg. They had much more people show up at those rallies. The people there were much more excited. I think once people got afraid that Biden would be their only choice, that's why the coalition got so strongly behind him.
I think part of that then was like the fact that Biden, like after South Carolina, which Biden won, like
that was done after then. But he lost Nevada and
Iowa.
Well, Iowa was such a screw up. Oh my god, I think that really put a damper on things too, is having that big caucus, because Mayor Pete was calling that a win for a long time.
Well, each campaign has their own people at each like polling area. And how Iowa works is because it's a caucus, then attendees can quantify everything that happens at a caucus.
But they got to get rid of caucuses.
Exactly, and that's the problem. And so like people then were like, well, how does Pete know that he won? And even so, he ended up winning. But every single campaign that has a person at each station, and Pete's campaign had a person at each station, all 1,000 and whatever of them. So it's like they were able to, and they released their own numbers, and it was very similar to what the final result was because you're able to do that. Obviously, if it were a typical primary, you wouldn't be able to do that either. So I think what happened there obviously is a mess up, but then you also have people who because Bernie doesn't win, then they think everything must be rigged against them, but they don't fully then understand how political systems work. So then their argument is kind of moot because they're criticizing something that they don't understand. And I think that's a problem with Bernie people online that have commented.
What defines a Bernie person?
What I'm talking about is the specific thread that I was looking at on Twitter. I'm not saying like everybody, but some people, it was like a progressive Twitter that said like, all right, now that the dust has settled, what really went wrong with the campaign? And people were like, oh, it was the DNC chose for everybody, blah, 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 blah. But I think if you just approach it singularly in that way, then it becomes an easier narrative than trying to understand how all of these different threads come together.
He bet on some wrong I think he really thought that, and I don't think this is a mistake, I think this was an intentional choice. I really think that he thought with Trump and everything that class would be kind of the equalizer, but we just became our climate became such like a racially divided, like especially in the past 18 months, that you can't say that class and race are the same thing.
Yes,
and I think him trying to lump that into one demographic really hurt. I think if he had visited more southern states, like South Carolina, like North Carolina, like Virginia, like Alabama, and maybe interacted with more people, I think he spent a lot of time in swing states. He spent a lot of time in like higher concentration Latino areas, which he did well in Nevada.
Yeah, we did well in Nevada. There is
and here's the other thing. If we were not running against Trump right now, that Democratic primary would have been so different. We would have had 3 people with 3 different views on stage. But instead we had 8 people where, okay, this was the really hard thing. It got to the point where everybody was the moderate.
Yeah.
And then Bernie was the only liberal one. I think it would have done better if Warren had played more liberal. I think she got nervous and tried to back down and be more conservative. Then, because I would have felt fine backing a candidate like Warren, but she got so muddled because she just became kind of a moderate gray.
Well, because when you run for president, and you have so many people running, you need to find a lane that works. And because Bernie already has the 2016
he has the far
campaign
and he has the far left,
Yeah.
but you could have cut the difference between moderate and far left.
But that's hard. That's harder of a brand to get for a presidential campaign to have.
But it's not good when there's 6 other people that are all also the moderate candidate, because now you have nothing. At least then you would have had some. I mean, it was a choice she made, and it was again a gamble. But I think if you're talking about centrist, nobody other than Joe Biden had the chance to win as centrist because he was just too established.
Yeah, exactly.
He was a household name, and that's everything. Being connected to Obama is huge.
Yes.
And I don't think Biden would get very far off his own public speaking and his own policy.
No. So, and this is something I was reading about too. Apparently, the campaign for Bernie's they kind of saw South Carolina as this is something Joe Biden's going to win, so we're not really going to invest as much time and energy into winning it, which I think makes sense.
That makes sense from their position to do that.
It makes sense from their position to do that, but then you have the problem of, and this is why ground game is important in all of the early states rather than just Iowa, which is what happened to
He spent a lot of time in Iowa.
Yeah, which happened with Pete as well, is that even if you get wins, the momentum can still change. And so like Bernie then won Nevada, which is great, and which he reached out to Latino voters or Latinx voters.
Joe Biden was polling so poorly at the beginning. Every time he spoke, his point was so bad.
Yeah.
But he just needed, and they said this, his campaign, I got to give them credit. They kept saying, we know we're losing, we just need one win, and we
Yeah.
can get tried. Because
And they
that's
did.
all they had to do was prove that it was possible. Because everybody assumed he was the front runner, but then he started talking and saying things and meeting people, and
Yeah.
he's like a weirdo kind
And
of.
I think it obviously, like, there's so many things that we could talk about him. I think what happens in South Carolina then is that if you don't have enough investment in it, that he wins by such a margin that it becomes a big thing. If that were a close race between Biden and Bernie,
No, it wasn't at all.
it wasn't at all. But if Bernie was able to get more ground game and able to get more people in those black communities who voted for Biden to maybe also consider him and maybe vote for him, and even if Biden won by 2%, then you could then make the argument that, well, this was the state he said he was going to sweep, but he didn't win it by that much.
I wish we could redo the primary. Because imagine doing a primary now where we have an economic collapse, a global pandemic, and an extremely volatile racial situation going on right now with complete police reform. These weren't things 1 year ago.
No.
So this is like, I want to redo. It doesn't have to be Bernie. I like Bernie, but let's get someone different then maybe,
Yeah.
or just because.
That's why I want AOC.
Yeah, she's not old enough,
I
unfortunately.
know.
But
That's why I want AOC.
we need somebody younger.
Yes.
That's really what it has to be.
I think that's another thing,
That's
too.
another huge thing. All these people were so old.
I think that was the one thing that Pete had going for him, was that he was younger.
I did not like it when he did speaking, though. I found him to be kind of tone deaf.
Yeah, so, but that was the one lane, that was the only thing that really, I mean, there were other things that you could say, but his youth was the one thing that was most prominent in terms of carving
Most
a lane
promising,
for him.
yeah.
So, because everybody else was basically 70 plus, he was also the person that wasn't the only millionaire, so you already have branding for...
He was a millionaire.
Nope, he only had $100,000
What?
in savings.
There's no way. Okay, what about equity? The man's got a $600,000 house.
That's
and like,
what it...
and
That's
like four
what,
cars. I call
that's what I said. That's what...
absolute nonsense on him having $100,000.
That's what 538 said.
I know, okay, but you can have a $100,000 bank account and you can have $6 million in assets. That's absolute. Everybody up there was.
I'm
a
not
million.
saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying that gives you the opportunity to brand yourself in ways that other people who were older and had more money cannot.
He didn't lean into that though. He leaned into
Exactly.
again the more conservative and the more moderate.
Exactly. So it should have. So I think he would have had a better campaign if. And he wanted to get rid. There were interviews that he did before his campaign fully took flight that I liked better. But then obviously.
Yeah, I liked him in the beginning, but then once the debates started, that's when I kind of.
Exactly. Because then you have to. Then it's the lane carving, all that crap.
Mm-hmm.
I think. And like he wanted to get rid of the electoral college, and he wanted to do a bunch of stuff, but then. The
It
debates
seems
happen
so
and it's
petty
bad.
that like we spent so much time talking about the electoral college. That's why I said we need to go back. We need to redo, David. The issues that are prevalent right now didn't exist nearly as much. I mean, obviously they existed, but things are so different contextually. We need something different.
Yeah.
We need like.
Well, let's hope then that Biden doesn't. I mean, it sounds like you said. It sounds like he's.
It sounds like he
planning
kind of
on-
wants to do hands off. Like he's.
That's what I say is, and here is what I would say would make a really good argument right now is if he has a black woman as vice president and he makes a commitment towards like getting people who are heads of his department Secretary of State, etc., etc. I think you need a diverse cabinet there,
Yes.
and people who are not just politicians either, but not in the way like Trump is doing it. Who are like experts in their field. And I feel like if I were to be president, that's what I want. For health and human services, I would want someone who is extremely knowledgeable about the ways that like people of color are being mistreated by
My
our healthcare
problem is
system.
though, it's like they keep saying it's like he's gonna. But who are the options for him to pick? Is it like Tulsi Gabbard or like Kamala Harris?
No,
or...
so as far as what I've heard, it was Kamala Harris, Keisha Lance Bottoms, the
I
mayor
wouldn't
of-
love Kamala Harris.
I
as
don't either.
vice
Let me pull it
president.
up. I'll pull it up.
Like I don't. I guess it doesn't have to be somebody famous, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like I feel like I don't. Like with other or people, you can be like, oh, there's this, this, and this. But it's like I feel like he's pulling names out of a hat, or he's gonna pull somebody that I've never heard, which again is fine. but I'm also just have this cynical idea of them like trying to build up this very like we're creating the ultimate vice president. We're not finding somebody who's like genuinely passionate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's cynical, but it's like I feel like I just have such low expectations.
See, that's why I want Stacey Abrams to be vice president. Cause
I don't know anything about Stacey Abrams. Was she?
She's been the head of the Democratic caucus, or head of the Democratic body of the legislature in Georgia. She ran for governor and lost.
Oh, you know what? I did hear her on the radio.
Hers was the state where there was like all the voting crap because Georgia gonna do what Georgia gonna do.
Milwaukee gonna do
it. But I think what I like about her then is that compared to somebody like who's part of the Democratic elites, let's say like an Elizabeth Warren, for example.
Yes.
What I like then is the fact that like you have a vice president who comes from a state where it's like she's not just coming from an elite part of the government, but she's coming from an area where she can talk about voting issues, she can talk about racial issues from her own lived experience in ways that other candidates can't. And I feel like that's going to be so important in terms of motivating people to come out and to go vote. Because you need somebody who's going to be like, I don't want to say a rabble-rouser, but you need somebody who's going to be able to like talk to groups like the Black Lives Matter movement and energize
You need
people.
this, because people are like, oh, Biden's leading 17 points or whatever, but this is what happens. You do that, and then people don't vote.
And then you,
so you
elect,
can't,
and then you nominate Tim Kaine.
Or Tim Cook. You can't feel safe, okay? It's not.
You
it's
can't
not
rest
over.
on your laurels.
It's not over till it's over.
Yeah.
They were saying, I mean, right up until the night, Hillary Clinton was like 95% chance to win or something, which I don't even know how you come up with that statistic.
So I trust 538 the most.
538 also got a lot of things wrong during the primary. I don't know if you're keeping your eye on like the first 15 states, but they were all over the place.
Well, that's true.
But nobody could have known.
But like the problem with statistics is that they're not predictors.
No.
And that's the problem, is that people think
They
statistics
can
are
be
predictors.
self-fulfilling prophecies, though. That's the scary thing, is people see that, this guy's the person most likely to win, so now we'll vote for him. It's kind of a scary amount of power.
The power can come from that. But I think people get confused when they say, like, well, 538 was wrong because they gave Hillary Clinton a 65% chance of winning. But that's not how statistics work.
No, I understand how statistics work.
I'm not saying it's a problem with you, but I'm saying the general people in general should understand how statistics work, because if you don't, then you're not able to like reflect on this and look at where did the polling go wrong.
I think it's really hard to give a statistics to point stuff, because people like I say, when in these first days, I think Sanders was posed to win like the first 7 states. He had South Carolina